Game of the Year, 2018. Huge year for games. This list was tough. We're just going to start from the top and say that God of War won Game of the Year for me. It was tough between God of War and Red Dead, but I think God of War is really just a solid game throughout. There's no bullshit, there's no padding, there's no really ups and downs in the story. It's just a constant stream of quality content, especially for a franchise that wasn't anywhere on my radar a year ago. I mean, I played through God of War 1, 2, and 3 and enjoyed them, but I never thought that in the year 2018, the new God of War would be my favorite game. I mean, just from the get-go, you get your hands on it, and the combat is fresh and exciting, and throwing the Leviathan axe and bringing it back, it just has this feeling to it that not many other games can match up to in terms of combat. It's kind of a weird way to say, but there's a sense of empowerment every time you enter a fight. That game also just wowed me in sense of the story. I never expected a story as deep or as powerful or as emotional as the one that we were given. It's pretty clear that the change of directors from, I don't think David Jaffe did God of War 3, but David Jaffe to Corey Barlog was just a huge tonal shift for the franchise that really paid off, and I'm really excited to see where they go from here. Man, that game, I played on, I know a lot of people didn't based on my conversation I've had with them, but I played on the challenge mode, not the highest difficulty, but the second highest difficulty. And a lot of people said that like they wanted to feel like a god, and that mode kind of took that feeling away from them. But for me, that challenge elevated that game for me in a way that I don't know if other people, or I guess Joey and Meals and a few other people, I don't know if they got the exact same experience as I did, because it had this heavy sense of accomplishment whenever I beat a section, or with the Valkyries. Beating the Valkyries was a huge accomplishment for me. Not saying that it's like a huge thing I should be proud of, but I was really happy and felt this sense of empowerment every time I beat a Valkyrie, especially the last one, which is one of the toughest things I've done in a game this year, and it felt really awesome to finally defeat them. There's not anything I can probably say unique about God of War. I think it's just the most solid game that came out this year, and therefore beat out the rest of the competition, which I guess that's a good way to start talking about Red Dead Redemption 2. I don't usually put games on my Game of the Year list that I haven't beaten. I haven't beaten Red Dead Redemption 2. But it's weird because it's a conscious decision for me. I stopped playing like 2 months ago because I reached a point in the game where I felt like I would have to rush through the rest of it. And that's not how I wanted to play it. That's not how I wanted to. I was enjoying it so much, I didn't want my final moments with that game to be rushed. So I decided to take a break in the second to last chapter, and just let it sit for a bit and come back, because I was loving that game. I think there's been a lot of criticisms with Red Dead Redemption because it didn't match up to what people thought was going to be the follow-up to the first game, second game, but Red Dead Redemption with John Marston. And it's hard to explain that Red Dead Redemption 2 is a weird game because the moment-to-moment gameplay is not necessarily fun, but if you go off and explore the world like I did for most of my time, I think there was a week straight where I just didn't play any story content. I just explored and hunted. It's a very, very relaxing game in a way. I mean, you're constantly in fear of getting mauled by an animal, but it's relaxing because it's a very detailed, jam-packed world that it really does feel like you're just exploring the wilderness. And that wasn't I didn't think that would be the appeal of the game for me, but I ended up enjoying it a lot more than I was expecting. And then when I got bored of that, I could dive back into the story missions or just the stranger missions or whatever and find this incredibly well-crafted story that, I mean, with Red Dead Redemption, the last one, they obviously delivered a really good story, but this is just, I don't know, every character is so well made that every conversation pulled me in. Like every bit of detail that they put into every character and every personality, I just wanted to know more of their lives. So every mission just had this appeal of being another look into these characters. And I didn't think, based on the previews, that game would be a character-driven game. I thought it would be, have fun in the Wild West, shooting people, committing crimes, just causing havoc, and that's not at all what the game ended up being for me, which I love it when games take my expectations and completely flip them. So most of my time was just spent exploring. The other time was spent like really digging into this narrative. And like I said, I'm just taking it slow before finishing it, but I do plan on going back. But I want it to be, I've hit like this emotional moment in the game, and I don't want it to just be rushed through. I want to sit there and experience it and have the full weight of the game ending hit me. So when I do go back to that, I mean, maybe it would have, given more time, maybe I would have put that as my top game, but I still think God of War is just a more overall solid product. But Red Dead, like I said, just it's its own thing. I don't know how to explain it, and therefore it had to be my number 2 game of the year. Number 3 game of the year, switching it tonally, is Insomniac SpiderMan for PS4. I loved the Spider-Man games on PS2. I have very, very fond memories of those games, and because the follow-ups to those games, not obviously the same series, but just the continued attempts to make a really good Spider-Man game fell flat for, I don't know, a decade, it turned me off to the whole. I haven't touched a Spider-Man game since the PlayStation 2, and when they announced Spider-Man for PlayStation 4, I was hesitant because I was just like, oh, it's going to turn out like any other Spider-Man game they've tried to make in the recent few years, and I probably won't touch it. And I watched it, conference after conference, year after year, watching the trailers and being like, it looks really good. It kind of just looks like a Spider-Man movie an interactive Spider-Man movie. And I was like, it'll probably be good. but maybe I don't think it'll have the same effect on me that the Spider-Man PS2 games had. And then I dove into it because I just cracked and bought it, and man, from the moment that game lets you control Spider-Man, it feels great. I mean, everyone will say this about this game. You can see it in every review. Is the web slinging, just getting around the city, just the movement is so satisfying. And from their work, Insomniac's work on Sunset Overdrive, which was a game I played to completion but didn't necessarily love for other reasons. But the one good thing that it had going for it was the traversal mechanics. And giving Spider-Man to Insomniac after that was a brilliant move because it just is, it's a blast to play. Combat is not as deep as I would have wanted, but is fun regardless. Not on the level of the movement, but still pretty damn fun. The story, because you dive into Spider-Man's story, and he's been a hero for 8 years. It's not an origin story, it just throws you into this new take on the world. And Insomniac has made their own versions of all of the characters that they don't necessarily match up with what you might expect those characters to be, or where they show up, or how they come to be the characters that you probably know them as. And it was a really cool take, and I know that because of the just quality and the care that they put into this game, like this game is considered like its own part of Spider-Man mythos now. It's been tied into some of the comics. There's a very like small Easter egg about it in Into the Spider-Verse, which is equally amazing. I would say that if you have no interest in Spider-Man PS4, but you've seen Into the Spider-Verse, I think you'll enjoy Spider-Man PS4 even more, specifically because of the character of Miles Morales and his inclusion in Spider-Man PS4. I think it's a really good way of getting into the franchise if you jump from Spider-Verse into Insomniac Spider-Man. But anyway, game had a really cool story arc. It's a blast to play. I really want to see what they do next because, without spoiling anything, they tease what's coming next, and it's a familiar story with a pretty big twist on it that I would love to see Insomniac handle. Plus, I just want to play more of that gameplay. Number 4 on my list is Dragon Quest XI, which my number 4 and number 5 I don't think you'll see on either Meals or Joey's lists. Dragon Quest XI, Dragon Quest is the pinnacle JRPG franchise. Man, I grew up playing JRPGs, and the JRPG franchise didn't evolve as much as Western games were doing when I was growing up. So even though I have these memories of playing JRPGs that I absolutely loved, it was kind of just the same experience game after game, and I fell off of them for years. I don't think I've touched a JRPG in a long time. And I even, by the time Dragon Quest VIII came out, which was like the last big deal in the franchise, at least here in the West, I just didn't have any motivation. I bought it, didn't have any motivation to play it past the first couple hours. It was nothing new to me. And then Dragon Quest XI comes out. I'm seeing all these rave reviews. So I dove in. I've been playing it the last couple weeks. I haven't beat this either. I guess I said earlier that I usually don't put games that I haven't beaten on the list, but I'm actively every day still playing that game, trying to get to the end. So I'm putting it on there. And it's just, it doesn't do anything revolutionary. It really doesn't, even within JRPGs. It's just the best overall JRPG I've seen in 10, 15 years. It's just a colorful world. It's a great break from the darker, more mature storylines that games are delivering these days, which I do like that shift of them being a more mature media or medium. But Dragon Quest just kind of had this appeal of it's lighthearted, it's colorful, the character designs are playful, combat isn't too difficult, it's just kind of a game you can play through and have fun, and there's these great characters, and it's an interesting world, and the story takes some turns that you wouldn't necessarily expect, and it keeps you on your toes, and it keeps you engaged, and it's just a really... It's just a really fun game to play, but is also just another JRPG. I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's familiar. It's comfort food, I guess, would be the way that I would describe it. Comfort food for video games. And it's something that I think I needed this year, whereas other things were surprising me all the time and taking risks and pushing the games industry in ways you wouldn't necessarily expect. Dragon Quest is just a comforting, not too surprising experience. I don't know. It's hard to explain it, but it is just one of the better gaming experiences I've had this year. So we're going to get to number 5 now. And 5 on this list is a game that I don't know a single person that's played this game other than me. I know for a fact it's not on their lists. I know for a fact that if I said the name, and when Meals is editing this later, he'll probably have to look it up. But my number 5 game of the year is Vampyr by Don't Nod Studios, the creator of the Life is Strange franchise. This game came out to absolutely no buzz whatsoever. It's a weird looking game. Like, it just kind of looks edgy. It doesn't look that deep, doesn't look that unique, doesn't look that interesting. Vampires as a theme are just over and done with. I think everyone in our generation is just sick of vampires in entertainment media. So a lot of people overlook that. It's just not an interesting concept to a lot of people anymore. But I picked up this game. I think it was real cheap. It was a Don't Nod game, so I was like, yeah, I'll put some money down on it. I'll try it out. I had just finished Life is Strange, so I was real excited to see what else they make. And I started playing this game, and it's rough. It's a rough game, and I understand why a lot of people haven't played it. But, so basically you are in Victorian London, and I guess this will be the only game I really describe, because I know a lot of people haven't played it. You are in Victorian London, you wake up in a pile of bodies, and you have no idea what's happened to you, and the only thing is that you have heightened senses and a thirst for blood. And I'll skip a lot of what happens next, but basically you find out you've been turned into a vampire. London is in the middle of this plague that has basically kept all of the districts isolated. London is just in a state of emergency. You become a vampire. You don't have much of a memory, but you start to remember, and you remember that you are a doctor, and not just any doctor, not a surgeon, but you are specifically a blood transfusion specialist. who created this like revolutionary new process for blood transfusions. So you get hired to work at this hospital, and via this hospital, not only you're trying to, well, depending on how you play the game, you're trying to save the people affected by this plague, but you're also trying to figure out where this plague is coming from, how it's connected to you being a vampire, what exactly is a vampire in this world, because your character didn't know they existed until the start of this game, and it's just a very interesting game story. And when you start to play it, it doesn't seem that novel, and you get farther into it and you start getting introduced to the combat and the depth of the combat, and it's a very challenging game. It's got a lot of like similarities, like kind of Dark Souls style. You're just dodging all the time. The game has this very cool mechanic where like you're killing enemies, other vampires, thugs who are taking advantage of the situation in London, and like killing them will get you, and you do have a leveling system where you level skill trees and get new abilities, and you're killing enemies, and killing an enemy might give you like 10 to 15 experience points. So eventually if you grind through, you can make some progress. But killing civilians, draining them of blood, which you have to do discreetly, like you have to set up a scenario where you can drain a human without being spotted in scripted events, will give you thousands of experience and make you insanely strong. But you do have to make the moral decision to kill these characters. And then if you kill, the more characters you kill, the more their district that they live in falls into chaos. And then sometimes like vampires will make their way into the district and you have to defend it, or the entire district will just fall and all of the side content in that district will be locked out because the characters that would have given you that content are just dead. Because you let the plague advance too far. I know a lot of people aren't going to be interested in that game. It's a very niche game, but I enjoyed it a lot. It really dragged me in. It takes like 20 to 30 hours, and I think I played it in like 4 sittings. It just really gripped me, and I loved it, and it surprised me. And it's nowhere near as polished as the other games on this list. Nor does it have the same level of writing as the other games on this list, so it's why it's at the bottom. But it was a game I really enjoyed that I didn't expect, so that's why it's on here. So that's my top 5 of the year. Hopefully you didn't see all of it coming. I don't think you would have been able to. The top 3 obviously are kind of interchangeable for a lot of people. I hope the list makes sense. I hope I explained my reasoning pretty well, and I hope you all check out the games that I listed here.